Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hendersonville and the Blue Ridge Mountains of Western North Carolina. We missed the usual Sunday worship when we gathered in person, but we offer virtual worship as the next best thing. My name is Chuck Elston, and I will serve as the worship associate for the service today. The UU Fellowship is an inclusive community of faith for all ages. Here you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your sense of humor, your questioning mind, and your expansive heart. We are a welcoming congregation who embrace folks of all sexual orientations and gender identities. And we are genuinely friendly people, dedicated to making the world a better place. We invite you to join us, and we thank you so much for being with us today. For more information, please go to our website at UUFHNC.org. And please join us via Zoom at 11:30 a.m. this Sunday morning for Stone. The flaming chalice, which represents our faith, symbolizes a beacon of hope. Hear now the words of Janet Parsons. The flame of our chalice this morning is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. The flame lights our way back together again from our separate summer lives, and it lights our way forward into this new church year of promise and renewal.
Greetings, everybody. If we haven't met or this is your first time with us, my name is Don Rollins, and I serve this congregation as accredited interim minister here in Hendersonville. One last shameless plug. Chuck gave you the website for the congregation, and I would add the online address of our denomination. That would be uua.org, Unitarian Universalist Association, uua.org. Now let's come to this moment. If I can use the royal we, in our most private moments, when we get real, we know that the world as we knew it is fading or gone. We thank COVID for that. That's not to say we won't recognize or even appreciate some of the things we're learning in these times. It just means that deep trauma has its own energy. It means the deep trauma we're experiencing, physical, economic, psychological, spiritual. This trauma will leave us wounded, and it will leave us grieving, and we'll all be the better if we can get our heads and our hearts around that reality. What I have for you today is an adapted version of the message I gave last Labor Day, but that was a time when the COVID lexicon had not yet invaded our waking moments. Among the new words and the new labels are too crucial to being faithful to those who are taking care of us. That phrase, essential workers. So as we reflect on Labor Day and this emerging world, we remember those who are risking their health and sometimes their lives to help the rest of us cope. As we go along then, keep these folks in mind. Give them names, places you've been recently, people you've talked to recently. Keep them in mind. Now, as I mentioned later on, let them be your foreground and not your background today. First section, preface. This is not so much a Labor Day sermon as a telling of 4 reflections on work. It's about the value of labor to our greater good. It's about somebodyness. The somebodies who serve us food, the somebodies that fix our cars, the somebodies who pack groceries, the somebodies who are too often that background for our daily lives. As I'll say toward the end, what I'd have you take home with you is a keener sense of those background people, perhaps a deeper awareness of the often extraordinary, ordinary persons. They're all around us. And our country would be the lesser without them. Which brings me to Elmo Percy Rollins, my adoptive father, claimer of electric poles, one of an untold congregation of souls who have left this world a better place by their sweat. By the time he died 20 plus years ago now, there wasn't much left of my dad's world-worn body. And what 30 years of hard labor couldn't exact, alcohol and tobacco did. But between that time and this, I've come to see my old man in other more nuanced hues than his addictions and his foibles. I've come to believe that I was co-raised by a working stiff who intuitively understood that a job well done is a source of pride. It's a contribution to a better standard of living for people he had never met and never would. So let me tell you about my old man's Labor Day and why even in death, I think he has something to teach us. The section's called A Union Guy. At 5'7", 150 pounds, he did not look much like the retired bar brawler he once was. But he was. Armed with a cheap Saturday morning squirrel rifle, you wouldn't know that he was a Navy gunner who survived 2 Atlantic sinkings. But he was. And if you saw him perched high atop your nearby power pole at 2 a.m. because another storm just left you with another blackout, you wouldn't know that he was a proud member of his local chapter of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. But he was. My dad, Mo to his friends, was a union guy. Not an activist, not a shop boss, just a union guy. He never read Steinbeck, never heard of Joe Hill or Mother Jones or Eugene Debs. What he knew was that he and his fellow unionists worked hard, they sacrificed much, and they expected a day's pay for a day's work. Some of you have no doubt read Barbara Ehrenreich's work from 2001, Nickel and Dimed, on not getting by in America. That was her first-person underground account of life at base pay. Ehrenreich assumes a series of mostly minimum wage jobs: waitress, hotel maid, house cleaner, nursing home aide, Walmart associate. Jobs with your name on your shirt or your badge, but few benefits. The work is taxing for Ehrenreich. The pay is low. And not far into the book, the reader catches on that Ehrenreich and her fellow laborers are commodities and a too often soulless, unbridled capitalism that mocks our Unitarian Universalist call to economic justice. It's a painful read. For the first 10 years of his work life, this was my dad's story. He often joked that he was one of the few men on his ships that tripled his salary when they joined the Navy. Those years of struggle left him with a profound, if not articulated, bond with low-income laborers. Case in point, my dad never met a white person he didn't call sweetheart or buddy. I do not defend the paternalism, but I do defend his heart's intent. After the meal, he would stack the plates and group the glasses to make life a tad easier for whoever was going to bust that table. And even when our family's cash flow was at an ebb, he always overtipped, whether the service was good or not, because he believed nobody ever got rich waiting tables for their lives. The takeaway here is workers weren't just players in Elmo's world, not just food servers taking his order or going back a few years, the kid pumping his gas. For him, they were foreground, not background, persons of worth no matter their station or status. And so he modeled for me something I can only call guerrilla giving, his spiritual practice of treating his fellow workers as partners in a universal effort. He was always looking to give a few dollars where somebody might make a life a little bit, let me get that right. He was always looking to give a few dollars where they might make lives a tad better. Which leads us then to my old man's Labor Day. Every first Monday in September, come rain, shine, or searing hill country heat, my dad would rise extra early and drive the 20 miles to help cook soup beans for the big American Legion Post 371 Labor Day dinner. Soup, slaw, cornbread, sweet tea, enough pies and cakes to put the collective glucose level into deep space. The color guard then presented the flag. One member of the Women's Auxiliary sang the national anthem. A local clergy, Protestants only, offered up a prayer, and then it was let the caloric onslaught begin. Meanwhile, after hours of heat over the huge bean pots, the working stiff cooks figured it was time to rest. Some headed for the horseshoe pits, some for the poker table, some for family and friends. But for Elmo, it was the little circle of brother unionists and big war vets. When they were finally off the clock, these men had bowled together. They fished and they hunted together. They helped string one another's fences. They painted one another's cars and dug one another's wells. And when the time came, they went to one another's funerals. And so year after year, they sat and they cussed and they smoked and they drank, they gossiped, they did it together. You might say here that it was the union that bonded my dad to those guys. Maybe it was the war, or the fact that they were active together in everything from the Masons to the Shriners to their local volunteer fire departments. Theirs was a generation of volunteering. Or maybe it was something as simple as their deeply shared conviction that they added something important to the world, something worthwhile, something honorable. Regulars in our congregation will recognize those words. They were on my mind last week as I stumbled onto a 2010 article from progressive Christian teacher and author Barbara Brown Taylor, one of my favorite writers from the progressive Christian tradition. Taylor is also a fine storyteller, letting her real-life characters speak for themselves, most like my dad, with their lives. Let me share some of those stories Brown gives us. She writes, seems that not long after moving to a small town, Taylor saw, that's not correct, this is my introduction. Seems that not long after moving to a small town, Taylor saw all around her workers who were using their jobs to make the world a better place. Some with words, some with actions, some with their spirits. So now's the quote. The day I moved to Clarksville, I walked from the church to the post office, where I came up a quarter short on a book of stamps. Don't worry, said the clerk behind the counter. Just bring it back before we close at 5. She had a name tag. It read Elaine. And when I brought the quarter back, I told her my name, but somehow she already knew it. And 18 years later, I have learned to stand patiently in line as Elaine continues to greet her customers by name. Last week, a white-haired woman lingered at the counter, speaking of things that had nothing to do with the U.S. mail. There were 6 of us behind her, but Elaine never rushed her, never stopped smiling. When it came my turn, I raised my eyebrows as I slid my package across the counter. She lost someone close to her a while back, Elaine said in a low voice that only I could hear. But I don't mind. I like hearing the stories. Plus, I learned a long time ago that people aren't going to stop talking until they have said what they want to say. Bunny works at the laundromat across the street. When the water in my well is running low, she sometimes helps me with the sheets for $1 a pound. And other times we stand around talking as we watch clothes go round and round the dryers. This is how I learned that Bunny put up the posters and with the face of a beat up woman on them, right above the telephone number of a shelter for women fleeing abuse. She knows all about that, she says. This is Phil Brown. Bunny lets other people put up posters too, but only if the signs are in Spanish as well as English. She says one regular customer calls every week to ask when the Mexicans will be there because they make her uncomfortable. Now, I know it's mean, Bunny said, but the man who comes with her has one leg. And I thought about telling her that it makes people uncomfortable for him to be in here with just one leg. And when she calls now, I tell her that the Mexicans are here all the time. George drives a school bus, which is not how I know him because he also drives the college van when I take my religion students on field trips. These are just 2 of the 3 jobs he worked since the economy tanked and his retirement evaporated. Before that, he was a New York City cop, which explains both his natural authority and his accent. Some drivers snooze in the van while students explore a monastery or museum, but not George. I love learning new things, he says, locking the door and putting the keys in his pocket. And on the long drive home, while everybody else is conked out, George never takes his eyes off the road. It's hard to believe he's in his 70s. Once he has delivered us safely home, his shoulders then sag a little while he says goodnight to the students who stumble half asleep off his van. Brown then ends her yarns with solid theological reflection. She writes, I'm trying to decide where the faith is in these stories and why they matter so much to me. Perhaps, as Archbishop William Temple once said, it is a great mistake to think that God is chiefly interested in religion. What may matter more are the everyday ways that many of us rise to our work, serving one another with something close to gladness or at least singleness of heart, so that the life we share goes on working, not for any of us alone, but for all of us together. At this point, here's the point of the 4 stories, that our shared labor, paid or unpaid, temporary, volunteer, white collar or blue, parent, caregiver, the list is long. The point of the stories is in large part what holds this often crazy and bruised world together. Holding it together, together. This is the message from Florence Reese, longtime advocate for minors, most famous for her song, Which Side Are You On? This is the point of the Song of the Wage Slave, poet Robert Service's ode to manual laborers. This is a reminder from Samuel Gompers, co-founder of the American Federation. So there has existed across time a universal labor union far greater than any single body, far stronger than any exploitation inflicted upon it. Its name is human effort. Its name is holy human effort. So, folks, it's hard to celebrate Labor Day. It's hard to celebrate much of anything for some of us. But what say we act that way? What say we celebrate this COVID-tainted Labor Day, minus the actual UUFH campus? What if we celebrate community? What if we celebrate justice? What about beauty? And what about these three things are brought to us by our fellow laborers on this planet? Unemployed, retired, deep in your work, it just doesn't matter. What matters is we recognize that we are intertwined by our contributions to the work world. To wrap up, in the end, I can't say for sure what my dad would make of all these heady words. Chances are he'd roll his eyes, change the subject to baseball or cars. But I also reckon he might smile the smile of those who appreciate a job well done because they did. That would be the smile of the worker. With these things in mind, if you're watching this at 10:30 on Sunday morning, or you see this sooner than that, we'll be shifting into Stones of Compassion. For those of you who don't know about that phrase, that means we'll be sharing what's going on in our lives. And then we'll move in some reflections from the group. The two questions I'd ask that will guide that discussion. First, is there someone in your life who showed you the value of a job well done? Second question, is there a period or a moment in your life when you felt proud of your work? So with these two questions on your mind, I'll see you again either Sunday or a week from Sunday. Thanks for tuning in.
We close our time together today with a prayer from Canadian Mennonite pastor and educator Carol Penner. A prayer of blessing for Labor Day. Bless the work of our hands, O God. Bless the hands that work the land, hands that move earth, plant seeds, and harvest, hands with calluses and dirty fingernails, strong hands. Bless the hands that use machine, hands that drive cars, trucks, and forklifts, hands on computer keyboards, capable hands. Bless the hands that make things, hands that manufacture and create, working wood and metal and plastic, practical hands. Bless the hands that clean, hands that wash, mop, and scrub, hands that know what to do with soap, determined hands. Bless the hands that make music and art, hands that play instruments and hold paintbrushes, hands that are creative tools, artistic hands. And bless the hands that care for people, hands that cook and feed and heal and nurture, hands with a gentle touch, loving hands. Bless the hands that are generous, hands that give away money and food, hands that are always trying to be empty, Christ-like hands. And bless the tiny baby hands. Bless the strong adult hands. Bless the hands that are folded in prayer. Bless the hands that are lifted in praise. Our hands do the work of your hands, O God, our Creator. Amen.